our respiratory rate only goes up minimally, but the intensity increases drastically. We looked at homeostatic imbalances of the respiratory system, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It's a major cause of death. Common factor, cigarette smoking. They include two conditions, or COPD includes two conditions. Obstructive emphysema, and he was the pink puffer. Remember him? Because he was getting barrel-chested, but he was still getting gas in those unaffected sacs. And then chronic bronchitis was the blue bloater because he could not get the gas in, so he becomes cyanotic, his mucosa beds. Asthma, not classified as COPD in the state of Florida. Alabama, yes, but in Florida, no. We looked at changing of respiratory function with aging. Old people lose respiratory function because of loss of elasticity to the thoracic cage. The digestive system, the alimentary canal, it includes, its functions include digestion, absorption, and ingestion. Ingestion, digestion, and absorption. The organs for our digestive system include the mouth, the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, and the anus. We did not mention liver. The liver, the teeth, the tongue, the gallbladder, the glands like salivary glands, and the pancreas, those are accessory organs. No liver in the actual main organs. The digestive processes, ingestion, taking food into the GI tract, usually by mouth. Propulsion, moving it through with peristalsis. Mechanical digestion was the physical preparation of our food for the chemical breakdown. The digestion part, the chewing, mixing, churning with the food, and then the segmentation of the GI tract. Absorption was the passage of those small molecules from the GI tract into either blood or lymph. The histology of the alimentary canal. The whole canal had basically 4 layers or tunics. The mucosa, or mucous membrane, is involved in secretion of mucus and digestive enzymes and hormones. Absorption is the end product of digestion. The 3 layers of the surface epithelium, the lamina propria, and the muscularis mucosa. Muscularis mucosa was not involved in peristalsis. Muscularis mucosa was just moving that inner layer of the tract. The submucosa was dense connective tissue. It had blood and lymphatic vessels. The muscularis externa was that thick layer that was involved in the peristalsis. Muscularis externa, peristalsis, segmentation and propulsion and mixing. The nervous system of the alimentary canal, we had some intrinsic or enteric neurons that communicate widely with each other, and they control the digestive system's activity. We looked at the functional anatomy. We went back and started at the top. The mouth, only part involved in ingestion. We had to control salivation, and we use our nervous system to control salivation, primarily parasympathetic fibers. There were chemoreceptors and pressoreceptors that activate salivation, but so does the thought of food. The sympathetic system causes the release of mucin-rich saliva that dries the mouth. We looked at the pharynx, the oropharynx, and the laryngopharynx. They act as passageways for food and air. The esophagus, a muscular tube, collapsed when there's nothing in it. It passes through the mediastinum and enters the abdominal cavity through the esophageal hiatus. The digestive processes of the mouth, the pharynx and the esophagus. The mouth ingest. Mechanical digestion begins. The pharynx and the esophagus are conduits to the stomach. The stomach is a storage tank. The stomach varies from 50 milliliters to up to a gallon. The microscopic anatomy of the stomach. It has 4 tunics. Muscularis is modified into 3 layers of muscle: a longitudinal layer, a circular layer, and an oblique layer. It is lined with goblet cells that secrete mucus. It has gastric pits. Those gastric pits had 4 different types of cells. Mucus are neck cells that secrete mucus. Parietal are oxonic cells that secrete hydrochloric acid, HCl. Chief or zymogenic cells produce pepsinogen, an inactive form of pepsin. The digestive processes, there were some enteroendocrine cells, the 4th type. They release hormones or hormone-like substances like gastrin, histamine, endorphins, and serotonin. The digestive processes that occur in the stomach. It degrades our food both physically and chemically. It delivers chyme to the small intestine. We regulate our gastric secretions. We use the nervous system and some local enteric reflexes. We also use the vagus nerve to stimulate secretion. The sympathetic stimulation inhibits gastrin. Gastrin is the primary hormone that is involved in and secreted by the stomach. There are 3 phases of regulation of our gastric secretions. The cephalic stage is when we just think about it. The gastric phase is when the food hits the stomach. The intestinal phase is an excitatory stage that begins as the partially digested food begins to fill the duodenum. Gastric mobility and emptying. The stomach exhibits a stretch, relax reflex. It stretches without increasing the tension in the muscle part up to a point. Peristaltic activity begins in the stomach. It starts at the cardiac sphincter as a gentle contraction, and it increases as it goes down towards the pylorus. The small intestine and its associated structures. The small intestine begins at the pyloric sphincter. The duodenum is the entrance for bile and pancreatic juices. After the duodenum, the jejunum, then the ileum, then the ileocecal valve, and after that we enter the large intestine. Small intestine have villi, and the villi increase the absorptive area. Each villi contains an artery, a vein, and a lacteal. The villi are projections of the plasma membrane. The wall of the small intestines has 4 basic layers, but the mucosa is modified to contain absorptive cells and goblet cells. The liver and the gallbladder. The liver is involved in carbohydrate, lipid, and protein digestion. The hepatic cells produce bile. They process blood-borne nutrients. They process amino acids to plasma proteins. They store fat as soluble vitamins, and they detoxify substances. Bile, a yellow-green alkaline fluid. Bile salts are cholesterol derivatives. They emulsify fat. They facilitate fat and cholesterol absorption. They help to solubilize the cholesterol. Bile is not excreted, but it's resorbed and recycled. The gallbladder, a thin-walled green muscular sac. It stores and concentrates the bile. We regulate the release of bile into the small intestine. We use hormones. Cholecystokinin is the major one. CCK, regulation of bile release, CCK. The pancreas produces a broad spectrum of digestive enzymes. The pancreatic fluid contains water, enzymes, and ions. It has a pH of 8 to help neutralize the acidic chyme. The pancreas secretes enzyme for the chemical digestion of carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, all of them. It secretes hormones for the regulation of our blood glucose. We regulate our pancreatic secretions. We do it with local hormones, secretin and CCK. We get a little bit of stimulation from the vagus nerve to release the pancreatic juices. We talked about our large intestine. The main function of the large intestine is to absorb water. It is a dryer. The large intestine has three unique features. It has some longitudinal muscles that are arranged in three different ribbons that we call coli tendinae. The tone of these little coli tendinae cause the colon to pucker up into pouch-like little haustra. Our large intestine is divided into the cecum, the variform appendix, an ascending colon, a transverse colon, a descending colon, a sigmoid colon, and then into the rectum and the anal canal. The colon has a normal bacterial flora. That bacterial flora synthesizes the vitamin B complexes. There are some digestive processes that occur in the large intestine. We went back to the stomach. The meal spends 4 hours in the stomach, 3 to 6 hours in the small intestine, 12 to 24 hours in the large intestine. No digestion occurs in the large intestine. We do harvest those vitamins that are manufactured by that resident bacteria. Defecation. The rectum is usually empty. Mass movements force the feces into the rectum, stretching the rectum and initiating the defecation reflex. Diarrhea. Food pushed through too fast. Constipation. Food takes too long. Some physiology of chemical digestion and absorption. Mechanical and chemical digestion. Combined, we call it enzymatic hydrolysis. We split small macromolecules into their monomers by using water and enzymes. We looked at each of the specific food groups. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates monomer are the monosaccharides. The monosaccharides are ready for absorption. We use enzymes. We use salivary amylase, breaks down the starch to oligosaccharides. The salivary amylase works in the mouth. The protein digestion, we use pepsin in our stomach. The optimum pH, 1.5 to 3.5. Lipids, we use pancreatic lipase to break it down. The nucleic acids, RNA and DNA, we use in small amounts for food. They are hydrolyzed by pancreatic nucleases. Absorption, we absorb our carbohydrates directly into the blood by facilitated diffusion. The proteins, we use secondary active transport to the epithelium. It diffuses into the blood. The lipids, too large to get into the blood, so we send them into the lymphatic system in the subclavian veins. The nucleic acids, active transport into the epithelium. They diffuse into blood. The vitamins, A, D, E, and K are the fat-soluble vitamins. The electrolytes, most actively absorbed along the whole length of the small intestine. Water, 9 liters of water enters the small intestine daily. We absorb 95% in the small intestine by osmosis. Abnormalities of the digestive tract. Cleft palate interferes with feeding. Cystic fibrosis, where the mucus gets so thick that it blocks the lungs. Gastroenteritis, inflammation of the GI tract. Aging in our GI tract. Activity declines. Fewer digestive juices produced. Basically, everything goes to pot with age. Tonight, nutrition, metabolism, and body temperature regulation. A nutrient is a substance in food used by the body to promote growth, maintenance, and repair. There were major nutrients and minor nutrients. The major nutrients, carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. Did I say that right? The major nutrients, carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. The minor nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and water. Most molecules can be interconverted between molecule type. There are 40 to 50 that cannot be interconverted. We call these essential nutrients, and they have to be ingested as a molecule. Carbohydrates, the major fuel for ATP. Cholesterol, fallen from grace of late, but we need cholesterol. Proteins, we get from eggs, milk, and meat. The ones we get from legumes, nuts, and cereals are missing one of their amino acids. The ones that we get from eggs, milk, and meats have all of them. They are complete proteins. Vitamins, organic compounds needed in small amounts. The fat-soluble ones, A,